My childhood was seeded with the idea that, at some point in the undetermined future, I would have a car that could do anything. There were two primary culprits who perpetrated this myth: my Uncle Ralph, and Michael Knight. Ralph, a college professor, athlete, and hilarious bedtime storyteller, would lull my brother, my cousins, and I to sleep with tales of an adventurous crew of do-gooders and their go-anywhere cargo plane. For those of you unable to penetrate the portmanteau, that's a car, a boat, and a plane, all in one spectacular vehicle. I don't remember Ralph specifying how the cargo plane was motivated. An electrified, Muskian vehicle seems directionally correct to me now, but it was. Undaunted by any terrain the team might need to traverse. Of course you probably know the other inspiration slightly better, a boundless black automaton called KIT. Everyone remembers that Kite Rider's whip could talk. But don't forget that the transom could also mount a moving big rig, fly, and drive through lava. Talk about a no-compromise vehicle. To start with the most disappointing bit, Audi's revamped 2018 SQ5 cannot, to the best of my knowledge, navigate through a lava flow. But when held up to a standard just below that of Knight Industries, it does seem to accurately represent just how far we've come in building vehicles with SUV form factors, sports car performance, and very little real compromise to separate those two seemingly disparate halves. It's important to remember at the start that the basic Q5, newly updated, is a pretty spectacular small SUV. Donor cars for performance variants don't get much cleaner than this, with improved space in the rear seats, ample cargo room under the hatch, and driving dynamics that mimic the A4 sedan so successfully you're likely to forget that you're a few inches higher off the ground. The SQ5 builds on that platform and makes it markedly better, and decidedly more entertaining, in any number of ways. Naturally, the most dramatic changes are evident in terms of the revamped powertrain. In place of the Q5's turbocharged 2.0-liter 4-cylinder, the SQ5 rocks a turboed 3.0-liter V6. The engine, which will also show up in the S4 and S5, manufactures 354 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. That last figure raised 22 pounds-feet from the last-gen SQ5's supercharged 3.0-liter. Those levels of power are enough to push the Ute from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.1 seconds, according to Audi's stopwatch, and to a top speed of 155 miles per hour. More importantly, this isn't a drag strip vehicle. It was more than enough power for me to pass scads of slow-driving Canadians, drop the throttle to the floor, and it was nothing to pass a logging truck on the dotted yellow, with a punchy exhaust note rising through the sound-deadening materials. Just enough to enliven the operation. The 8-speed automatic transmission is willing to play along in both cruising and hammering operations. Remember when automatics used to be awful? But my drive route for the first sampling of the SQ5 helped me to go far beyond evaluation of the straight-line performance. This was my first trip to Victoria Island, and after a mindless stint getting out of the British Columbia capital's central city, it became readily apparent why Audi staged us here. Following coast roads and chasing vistas of snow-capped mountains and breaking surf, the roads that brought me to Tofino on the north end of the island were twisting, climbing, and with just the right mix of glass smoothness and snow belt broken. My test vehicle was equipped with the new, optional, Sport adaptive air suspension, replete with 4 modes and a tremendous amount of height variation. The setup lowers the ride height in the default setting by about 1.2 inches when compared to the stock suspension, gives a still lower access height for loading and unloading, and rises up in off-road mode for an additional 2 to 9 inches of ground clearance. But critically for the do-anything-but-fast nature of the SQ5, the air ride combines with the 5-link front suspension to offer stable, rapid, and joyfully repeatable changes of direction. The last 20 miles or so of my test was made on increasingly narrow and winding roadways, over which this Audi SUV did a credible sports sedan impression. Body roll was surprisingly limited, and light but accurate steering proved pleasing to work around fast-flying combinations of corners. The S-Sport package that adds the air suspension to the SQ5 brings along a sporting rear differential in the bargain, and red brake calipers for you showy types, and at $3,000 tempts me into calling it a must-have for this car. Advanced off-roading ability and a willingness to stay flat in the corners does not, I suppose, a carboplane make, but I still think Ralph would approve. I didn't do much more than drive the SQ5 quickly on this first date with the new vehicle, but the paper case for its functional nature looks pretty good. The Audi will tow a reasonable 4,400 pounds, which usefully trumps the tow ratings for the Mercedes-AMG GLC 43, though not that 5,000-plus pound pulling Jaguar F-Pace. However, the Audi will tote more cargo in its capacious 57.3 cubic foot cargo area than either of those other fast trucks. There's a lot of room for people, too. I was as comfortable as expected in the front 2 sports bucket seats, though the bolsters on these Audi chairs do take me a minute to adapt to, what with me being a 6'5"